couple years ago, I had a health scare that forced me to go on medical leave from school, and in that time, I bought myself a PSVR headset because I thought it would be a nice form of escapism. I thought it would help me get through what was a really rough patch in my life, and one of the games that I started playing a lot was No Man's Sky. I thought it'd be really cool to get behind the stick of a spaceship and fly it around using motion controls and just explore this vast universe through the lens of a VR headset. And while that was a ton of fun on its own, one of the things that I was really drawn to was the base building. It was the first time since that had been released that I played No Man's Sky, and I thought it would be so cool to just find a really nice planet and then go and build a home on it. So I found this planet, which I called Corin, which is classified as a paradise planet, and decided that I would build a home/research facility on this planet. After I got started on that, though, I thought, why not do more? You know, what if someone could build an entire colony or city on one of these planets? And what if I could be the person to do that? Now, I went through on YouTube and found that a few people had already attempted to do that, and some had actually done it pretty successfully. But that didn't stop me from wanting to do it myself. I kind of like the challenge of starting from nothing and building a whole colony on an uninhabited planet. The big problem for me was that I'm not the most creative person when it comes to visuospatial things. I can't really just picture a structure in my head and then build it. So I've always struggled with games like Minecraft, like The Sims, City Skylines, anything where you're tasked with building things, because I just don't have that great perception of space. But despite that, I figured I would take on the challenge and try to build this city myself, and I got started on it. Unfortunately, life continued to move on. I ended up going back to school and finishing my degree, and I just never got back to building my city. Well, with all the buzz going on around Starfield lately, and the fact that No Man's Sky has been trending in the last few days, I thought maybe now was a good time to revisit it and try to tackle that challenge of building a city. And I think the best way to motivate myself to do that is to share all my progress with you guys. So that's what we're going to do here with this new video series. I'm going to give you step-by-step updates on the city building process as we go through it. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, I'm sure. I've never been the best at building interconnected systems in games for things like power and agriculture. I've never even been that good at building structures, but I'm going to give it my best shot, and we're going to see if we can build a city in No Man's Sky. So we're going to get started here today. This is the first episode, and I hope you guys will stick along for the journey. So today we're going to get started with a few roads. Now, I don't really have a basic layout for my city yet. I haven't planned it completely. But I want to do sort of a test area where I'm setting out a few basic roads and creating a city block structure just to give myself sort of a foundation to build upon. It'll also help me experiment with building different building types and using different materials and sort of learning the ins and outs of the building system when I'm trying to tackle something this big. Of course, we've got my research facility here, which is relatively small compared to what I want to do, so it's not really indicative of the kind of building I'm going to have to do later on, so it's going to be challenging, but I'm ready for it. So today we're going to be working on the roads, and as you can see here, I've kind of got a head start on that. Now the reason I'm starting with roads is that it's going to be used to create sort of a grid system where I'm dividing my city up into blocks ahead of time, and that's going to lay the foundation for where all the buildings are going to be. So it's just going to help me map things out a little easier. With that in mind, though, I've kind of run into a bit of a problem already, which you'll see here. Now, for the road, I've decided to make it out of the stone floor panel, the reason being that that's made of silicate powder, which I get from mining the earth and using the terrain manipulator. So the more earth I clear away to make room for my road, the more material I have to build the road, and the more fuel I have for my terrain manipulator. Now here's the problem I ran into. For the sidewalks and the block areas, I've been using the paving material, which is under the decoration tab, paving, you'll see here. This is the problem I'm running into. You'll see that the paving and the stone floor panel are actually slightly different lengths. So what that means is that this won't snap into the corner cleanly like I want it to. So if I place this down, now I've got this gap here that the only way to try and fill is to do that, and I can't fill in this corner, even if I use the small paving piece. So we may need to figure out a way around that. Now, part of the reason I wanted to use the paving for the sidewalk is, one, because paving sounds like it's something you would use to create some kind of pavement, some kind of pathway for vehicles or pedestrians. The other thing, too, is that my base, which I decided to build before I even had the idea to build a city, is made mostly of the paving as far as the groundwork goes. So I wanted to keep that sort of consistent throughout, but now it's looking like I might not be able to. Alright, so we've come to our solution. We're going to switch up the building material from the paving to the alloy floor panel. That works out well for me, actually, because instead of using the pure ferrite, it uses the ferrite dust, and I've got tons of magnetized ferrite, which I can break down into the pure ferrite, and break that down even further into the ferrite dust, so I should have tons of it to work with. I also kind of like the aesthetic of this. The darker color, like the black, gives it a nice contrast to the lighter color of the road. So this might end up looking better in the long run. Now, I've decided to build my roads in 3 panel width segments. That seems like it's a reasonable enough width to give me enough room to drive a car on or something like that, so I'm hoping this ends up looking okay. I might expand some of them to 4, but for now we're going to stick with the 3 panel width. Okay, so we can see I kind of screwed up here. I've got a couple panels laying over top of each other where they shouldn't be. So we're going to delete some of those, and hopefully we can correct that. Okay, so here are the culprits. And again, one there. So I want to try to have this as uniform as possible and keep that grid structure and keep it consistent. So what I'm thinking I might do is, even though my base is made of the paving material, I might delete the edges of that and make an alloy border. Although I might run into the same problem there that I'm running into with the floor panels, that it won't line up evenly. But we'll see. I'm going to just adjust this road and make the corrections I need to as far as the overlap goes, and then we'll deal with that afterwards. Okay, so got the overlaps there fixed. That looks good. And now we're just going to switch this sidewalk on this side to the alloy material. Now, this would also probably be much easier if I was playing on PC. I'm not sure what the controls are like, but I'm sure they're a lot better as far as the building goes than playing on console. So this might take me a little longer than I'm kind of hoping it will. I don't have a good estimate. I've never done something like this before, but I'm hoping it doesn't take a super long time. Obviously, I'm not going to get it done in one day. There's going to be a few episodes of this, but I want to get a good chunk of at least maybe a small district out of the way, and then we can go from there. So already this is going much more smoothly using the alloy panels. It's snapping in exactly where I want it to go. There's no overlaps, and it's sliding into the corners really nicely, so this is looking a lot better so far. So I am going to put the black border around the edge of my base, and we'll see if it looks at least decent. I'm not liking the sort of inconsistency I have between the sidewalk on one side and the sidewalk on the other side, so we're going to switch that up right here. If I can remember the controls. There we go. Just for now, we're going to delete that. Okay, so I want that to snap in right there. And you'll see here we've got sort of an inconsistency in the width in that this piece of road is underneath the sidewalk here where it shouldn't be. So we're going to try and fix that as well. So you'll see here that inconsistency in length between the floor panels and the paving is pretty obvious. So there's about a foot difference between the length of the two, and that was what was really bugging me earlier. And again, it just seems like the floor panels are the much more uniform shape. Multiple materials fit together nicely with each other, so I can switch up designs on the ground if I need to, but the paving is just not going to work long term. One of the frustrations with going back and doing this and making all these corrections before we go too far is that every time I delete something now, because I'm out of base terrain edits, the ground restores itself, so I have to go back and get rid of it again, which is kind of starting to get on my nerves, but hopefully I can stick through it because there's a lot more to be done still. And I'm sure I'm going to make lots more mistakes along the way. Again, I've never been a huge Minecraft guy or even The Sims or anything with building. Didn't play too much City Skylines. I played that a little bit, but not enough that I'm an expert by any means on building things, especially in games. Like, it's something that my mind just doesn't deal with well. So this is a bit of a challenge for me. Okay, and there we go. Now this sidewalk's a little narrower than the other side, but the alloy flooring slides nicely underneath the paving flooring. So I'm not super concerned about it. It actually looks pretty good like that. Now I think I'm going to toss down a paving panel right there just to square that corner off. But yeah, that looks nice, so we're going to stick with that. And then we've got this whole area to deconstruct and rebuild, so let's get to that. Now the nice thing about building on this planet is that it's one of the few paradise planets I've actually managed to find, so I don't have to worry about any kind of inclement weather disrupting my construction. I can stay outside the whole time and not worry about dying from a superheated storm or something like that. So that makes this project a little bit easier. It also helps keep my resource costs down a little bit, so that's another bonus. Okay, so we finally got that deleted. Now it's time to get the blocks in. Okay, this is me discovering something new. I didn't know I could have a drone camera for building. Didn't realize toggle camera meant fly around and place things like this. This makes this so much easier. Especially if I'm going to delete stuff. Yeah, this is going to let me get from one area to the next much more efficiently. That said, I do kind of like running around in third person and placing the parts. Something about it just feels a little more productive and a little more involved, too. I don't like just sitting around and doing nothing, and the build camera kind of makes me feel closer to doing that. Okay, so we've got up to the end of this street. We're just going to leave that area for now, because I want to build off in that direction a little more to start. I don't know why, I think something about that direction just speaks to me, so we're going to build over that way and see what we find. Yeah, let's just fill in this area with flooring.
Flooring is the general term for a permanent covering of a floor, or for the work of installing such a floor covering. Should I keep going?
No, Siri, I didn't ask you anything. So before we go too much further with building, I'm going to hop in one of my exocraft and take it for a test drive on the road. I just want to see what the width looks like with a vehicle on it. I maybe should have done this earlier, but... Okay, yeah, so that's plenty wide. Maybe it wouldn't be so wide if there were two-way traffic, but we all know that's not going to happen, so... This is good enough. Besides, this is a kind of a monster-sized exocraft, so it's not too big of a deal if it can't fit two of these on it. Alright, so let's hop out of there. Let's try the Nomad. The Nomad fits on the road much more nicely, but I hate how these vehicles control. I have not used these in forever, and now I'm remembering why. Okay, so we've broken through that slope onto the other side here. So this might be sort of where I end my road for now and start building in other directions, just as a starting point. Alright, so we've taken out a pretty good chunk of this planet here. Let's get back to building the road. I'm thinking the most challenging part of this is going to be just clearing away the land, because this is a really tedious task, and I'm already getting pretty tired of it. I wish I could just mass flatten the area, but even the flatten tool in the terrain manipulator isn't all that great for this, because it leaves gaps. Like, there'll be rocks still left floating in the air above me after I'm done using it. So it's just a really slow process to get this part done. What I might need to do is recruit some people to come along and do some of the grunt work for me. Unfortunately, everyone I know who plays this game doesn't really like it. They find it a little too tedious. My girlfriend enjoys life sims and building games, so things like Ark, Stardew Valley, Minecraft, City Skylines. She's a huge fan of those, but for some reason she doesn't like the space setting of No Man's Sky. So as much as this part would be like perfectly in her gaming niche, she's not into it. So I've had a tough time convincing anyone to actually stick with this game and to help me take on this project. It's just moments like this where it starts to feel tedious. It's, you know, I start to ask myself if this is even worth the time I'm putting into it. But it's something to keep me entertained. Once it starts to get too tedious, though, I think I'll call it a day and then come back to it with a fresh set of eyes and a fresh mind. But at the very least, I want to try and just get this last little bit here done. Now, let's see. That's probably long enough, so let's put the road here. Okay, so there it is. Our first city block is complete. I think that's going to do it for today, though. I don't think I can do too much more right now. Next time, I think what I'm going to try to do is build a building or two on that block and just sort of get a feel for building bigger structures and not using just the prefabs here. Although I might try like a tower with the square room prefabs, but we'll see. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.